You're listening to another episode of Top Shelf Creator. On today's episode, I talked with my friend Daniel Chandler, who helps small businesses grow their teams by connecting them with affordable, full time, top 1% offshore talent. He loves working with small businesses and has been doing so for over 5 years and has been helping them affordably scale with marketing and staffing solutions. And on today's episode, we talked through a lot of what you should do when you're wanting to outsource something for the first time, as well as some considerations you should make as a business owner and what it looks like to scale sustainably. So let's get started. Get ready to discover the best way to create a thriving business online from other creators and entrepreneurs just like you, who are making a full-time living doing what they love. I'm Kabrina Ashley, and as a former Disney trainer and consultant, I'm here to guide you in telling the right stories so you can be seen and heard by your ideal clients. Each week, join me in conversations with industry leaders as we unveil the keys to crafting a sustainable business that helps you more than survive, but thrive. This is the first creator podcast to give you clarity, help you position yourself in the market, and harness your influence to scale your community. Welcome to the Top Shelf Creator Podcast. Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Top Shelf Creator. I am here with Daniel Chandler, and we actually met out networking. So we have gotten to see each other in human form, which is not always the case with our guests. So that's really, really nice. And so Daniel, I'd love for you to tell us a little bit about you and some of the things we're going to be talking about today based on your background.
Sure. So I'm one of the co-founders of a company called Hello Yeti. We were a digital marketing company that recently made a pivot to nearshore staffing. So we help American businesses build teams in Latin America. That's basically what we do.
And how did you get into this?
Yes, that's kind of an interesting story. Back in 2018, 2019, I got connected with my now business partner through a social media class, which was kind of a weird class for a lot of reasons. But one good thing that came out of it was me and some classmates got assigned to a real company to do a social media proposal for this company. And we got assigned to my business partner's company. He had a small marketing operation at the time. And so me and my classmates started meeting with him to talk about this project. And it was my first interaction with somebody who owned their own successful company. And the way that he talked and the way that he talked about business, and it was, like I said, a marketing company. So the way he talked about marketing, I just thought was cool. So he and I kind of hit it off and started having conversations, and I started working for him for his marketing company. And he had a small team in the Philippines at the time. The operation was pretty small. It was me and a couple of stateside employees and an offshore team in the Philippines. And so I worked with him all through college. And the marketing business grew and grew and grew to the point where he was my boss at the time. His name's Matt. Said, "Hey, do you want to partner and launch a full service digital marketing company?" And so I said, "Yeah, obviously that would be awesome." So that's what Hello Yeti was in the beginning. We were a digital marketing company. The reason that's relevant to staffing is because we built a lot of our marketing teams offshore in the Philippines and then nearshore in Latin America. And that's what really helped us scale in the marketing space. So much so that our marketing contacts, agencies and clients, started to ask us about the Latin American teams we were building. Like, how did you do this? Where are you finding these people? Because they were really impressed with the work that our nearshore teams were doing. And that very organically turned into a staffing service that we started to offer in addition to our marketing services. And so at the end of 2024, beginning of 2025, we decided to pivot Hello Yeti out of marketing and to staffing only. Long answer to your question, but to sort of encapsulate the answer, in like a sentence, staffing service, the nearshore staffing service grew very organically out of our marketing operation.
Yeah, and let's chat about, because you mentioned that you were onshore here in the States, and then there was offshore, and then there was nearshore. So for those of you who are listening who are like, I haven't hired anybody yet, or I've worked with people in the Philippines and it's been a mess, Daniel and I have actually had lots of ongoing conversation about this every week when we see each other. And so some of the things that I want to address is this idea of having somebody in the States. So that could be you as the person, and then having somebody either close shore, near shore, or offshore, so Philippines or South America. and talking about the kinds of differences. And so, why don't we talk about that first, and then we can talk about the different kinds of jobs that we can talk about near shore versus offshore.
Yeah, sure. So one of the biggest, if I'm understanding your question correctly, one of the most critical differences between like stateside teams and Latin American teams and offshore teams, just like a face value difference, is cost.
Hmm.
And that's what piques interest in outsourcing, I think, in the first place for a lot of business people is cost. Cost of labor in the States is really expensive. Cost of labor in Latin America is less expensive than the States. And cost of labor in the Philippines and in India and countries that are more Eastern, I guess, relative to us, is even lower than in Latin America. So I think that would be one of the most fundamental differences that sort of drives people to outsourcing or gets them interested in it is just the difference in cost, especially if you're a new company that's taking on a lot of growth and you need to build teams pretty fast and you're not comfortable with taking on the overhead and liability that comes with building big stateside teams. If you just like cannot do it financially, I think the cost difference with outsourcing is I think that is usually the first point of interest for most people when it comes to outsourcing.
Yeah. So when you're thinking about some of the things that you should be outsourcing first and thinking about, do I need a near shore or an offshore team for this specific thing? Because, in the entrepreneur space, with a lot of the people that listen to this podcast, there is very much that let's work with people in the Philippines. It's very well known. Until I met you, it's actually not something that I had heard of, even being in this industry for 13 years, of something that was near shore. So when people are thinking about, like, hey, here's the tasks that I want to get off my plate, this is really kind of a two-pronged question of let's talk about what they should consider giving to each individual nearshore versus offshore. But then also let's dig in a little bit deeper into the kinds of things that people can be considering. Because there's going to be people who are sitting there going, okay, well, I'd love to hire somebody, but I don't know what to get off my plate. I don't know what to start with. And I don't even know who to ask to look at this.
Yeah, okay, that's a good question. So two parts to that question. One, like more generally, where should you start outsourcing, like to anybody? Like what kinds of tasks are best to offload first? That's first question. Second question is like what are the differences, the pros and cons versus, between nearshore and offshore? Is that
Yeah.
like, am I understanding your question?
Yeah, so I think that
Okay.
if we talk about the tasks first that we should be
Yep,
considering, and then we break
totally.
those tasks into what would be better for nearshore, what would be better for offshore, then it gives people a little bit more ability to say, "Hey, yeah, I've got this task that's been sitting on my plate and I absolutely hate doing this."
Yeah, yeah, I totally agree. Yeah, let's put the differences in nearshore and offshore in context. We'll talk about tasks first because that's sort of the big picture view. This is going to sound like a wishy-washy answer maybe, but it's not. It's not intended to be. It's just the truth. It kind of depends. Like which tasks do you need to offload first as a business owner? It kind of depends on what your business is. It depends on what your client intake looks like. It depends on how much money you have to hire somebody because outsourcing admin is not the same as outsourcing like,
Mhm.
executive leadership. Like the cost is going to be significantly less to outsource admin than executive leadership, for example. I think a general rule of thumb, especially for like solopreneurs or, startup companies, and this is general, right? This is a generalization, but I think a good rule of thumb is start with admin and back office tasks. The reason for that is because, as you know, that stuff becomes really time consuming really fast. And it's a relatively low risk point of entry for someone who has never tried outsourcing before. And so if you have apprehension about it, if you're kind of hesitant about it, and you want to start with kind of a small step in the direction of outsourcing, admin is like a great thing because if someone makes a mistake in admin, obviously you don't want that. And you want to staff people who are competent and know what they're doing. But on the chance that, let's just say you staff somebody on your own, you don't work with a partner, an agency, you just like find someone in the Philippines to do your admin. If they make a mistake, that's going to be a pain. It's going to be less of a pain than if you bring somebody from the Philippines or Latin America and like tie them up in your finances and your cash flow, and then they make a mistake or
Yeah.
there's like an ethical breach or something. And I think a lot of businesses have that concern, and understandably so. So that's for those reasons, because admin is like a common time consumer for business people. It usually is like among the first things that starts to take a lot of time. And so it's like one of the first things that business owners start thinking, maybe I should outsource this. So for that reason. And the other reason is it's pretty low liability. Like if you
Mhm.
don't, that doesn't mean you be careless in the hiring process. We definitely treat all hiring cases with the same gravity. Just because it's an admin job doesn't mean we don't vet. We do. But for people who have apprehension about what they perceive to be risks of outsourcing, admin can be sort of an easier point of entry for people. So does that answer that first question?
Yeah, and so I wanna dig a little bit deeper into
Yeah, yeah.
that, and I think for those of you who are listening that are like, "Yes, I wanna outsource," but admin to a small business is pretty much, a good majority of what they do.
Mhm.
So, hiring somebody for just admin overall can be a little bit tricky, especially if you decide to do this on your own. So, one of the things that I run my clients through when they're looking to hire is how do we look at the day that we have? What are the tasks that we're doing? Time tracking things. And so this is for two purposes. One, we want to do what I call dadding it. We want to delegate, automate, or delete it. And so if we can figure out what that delete and automate piece is first, then we can delegate the things that actually need to be done. Because as both of us have seen, a lot of people will do tasks that don't need to be done because it's the cool thing to do. It's the fun thing that everybody's doing in the market right now, but it doesn't actually move the business forward. And so we don't want to hire on somebody who's doing tasks that we don't need because then we either have to move them over to something else or let them go as the business grows. So thinking about how do I make this machine work in the best way that I can before I bring more parts into it is going to be really vital for you. So if you're in the process of this, writing down everything that you do and meticulously time tracking for at least a week, ideally two. If you can get 10 days, that Monday through Friday, twice, of this is what I do every single week, it's going to be eye opening to the stuff that you're spending the most time on that you might not have considered outsourcing in the first place. So, social media posts, things that you do all the time, every single day. So, if you have the same kind of proposal going out over and over and over again, if you've got emails that need to be done that need organized before you read these X amount that people put into a folder and the rest of them get put somewhere else or given to your admin assistant. So those kinds of things to be considering as you're looking for near or offshore. And so I think that the next part of this, once you figure that out, is saying, do I need a nearshore person or do I need more offshore Philippines?
Yeah, and even just before I answer that question, just to elaborate on what you just said, because that's a good point. One important thing to consider when staffing anybody is that there is a difference between staffing someone to build a system and staffing someone to do tasks.
Absolutely.
And I think a mistake that people can make is that they hire someone to do tasks and they think this person will also build a system out for me while they
Mhm.
do these tasks. And that can be a dangerous assumption to make. It's really, really important before, and this is why my wishy washy answer in the beginning. Like,
Mhm.
what tasks do I outsource? Well, it depends.
Mhm.
But generally, admin is a pretty safe start. And it does depend. And the only way to know specifically what does my business need in terms of personnel is to take the time to figure out where your system is broken. So then you don't hire somebody and drop them into a broken system without even knowing it. Then if you have a space, like a specific area of your operations or something that's not working, that informs the hiring decision a lot better. And if you decide to work, with a partner like Hello Yeti, that informs us a lot better too,
Mhm.
because it's not good for our candidates to hire them and place them into a company where the job description is, hey, you're going to be a VA. And then they get in there and all of a sudden it's like they're not a VA, they're an operations lead.
Yeah, well, and this
You
is
know what I
really
mean?
interesting because I think that
Yeah.
so many, especially entrepreneurs and smaller businesses, get stuck in the weeds because it's like walking into a room that's really messy. And we all know how that feels to be like, I don't know what to clean up first because there's
Yeah.
just so much to go on. I think that when I walk into my office on a fairly regular basis and you look at all the things going on and you go, okay, well, what do I need to get off my plate? And so I think that when you're making this decision as somebody who builds out systems for businesses, being in a spot where you know what you can get off your plate first. And maybe that is hiring a VA to be like, I know social media needs to be happening. That is a non negotiable. I need to be out there in the space, whether that's a blog, social, whatever it is that's getting you out in front of people, outsourcing some of that stuff first that's repeatable over and over again that you're doing all the time. And then being able to step back and look at everything and say, where are things broken? Because I don't know if you've noticed this, but one of the things that I see with a lot of businesses when I come in and build the systems out for them is they don't even know what system they need.
Right.
They just know that they need a system. They're like, I've heard about this automation thing. What does that look like? Because not every person that you hire They might be good at the task, they might not be good at the strategy and the
Totally.
long-term thinking of how do I actually get this done?
Yeah, and if the strategy is what you need, then that's what you need to hire for. I think that's the point, which is why the discovery process for me, like when I meet people who are interested in staffing, is so important that I can ask lots of questions because every business is different. And I'm not going to pretend that staffing or even the nearshore staffing is a one size fits all solution for every business. I think it fits a lot more businesses than people realize. But the only way to know for sure like where to start is to talk to somebody and to ask them questions. And if you as a business owner are interested in staffing somebody, then I think it's going to be so helpful if you can inform your conversation in advance by just taking a look at where things are and are not working in your business.
Yeah, and deciding so one of the things that I work on in coaching is we call it DIA, it's decide in advance. What's the end goal of this?
Mhm.
If I get this thing off my plate or if I start creating something, what does this do for the business? And is this shiny object syndrome or is this me actually moving the business forward? Because what I see is that people make it so complicated, and some things in business absolutely are, but it's normally a lot simpler and a lot more streamlined than we give it credit for, and we wanna put all the frills on before we've even created the outfit that the frills go on, and I think that that's where a lot of this system and strategy comes in, and so sitting back and, again, doing that time tracking, but then also going, "What could things do?" So one of the questions that I ask my clients when I build out systems is, "If your day went exactly like you wanted it to, what would that day look like?"
Mhm.
And I'm like, dream big. Like, if you could be doing exactly what you wanted to do, and then I go back through that dream and I say, well, what can the computer do for us? And then what other things like SOPs, standard operating procedures, and knowledge base articles do we need to create so that somebody can take this and run with it when we do hire somebody on?
Yeah, and the great thing about nearshore teams is that you can find individuals in Latin America who can help you do that, like
Hmm.
what you're describing. So, 3 members of our executive team live in Argentina full time, and they help us like with our client intake. It was one of the ways we scaled in the marketing arena. It was like we started to build leadership teams in Latin America because we were having a difficult time doing the very thing that you and I are talking about right now,
Uh-huh.
like thinking strategically about where the problems were and like why are we spending so much time putting out fires. And so once we started to build a leadership team in Latin America specifically to help us with that, that's when the marketing operation really started to click. That was just huge for our business. In fact, just a few weeks ago, as we're sort of working through the client intake for Hello Yeti since we made the pivot to staffing, our COO, who's a guy in Latin America, reached out to me and was like, "Hey man, I just have questions about the client intake." Like he had some opinions, like wanted to know what was
Uh-huh.
going on. But that's whether that is a starting place, like whether you are at the point as a business where you need a strategic lead instead of like an admin team.
Uh-huh.
Um, I don't know. I don't really know, but the
Yeah.
business owner knows. And so really the best way to staff somebody who's really going to help your business is for me to be able to talk to them and ask them questions. So back to the original question that I guess started all of this, like what tasks do you start onboarding? What does your business need
Uh-huh.
to stay profitable, to run more smoothly? What do you need to do your job better? And if you're the face of your company, if you need to be spending more time doing sales, but you're doing like 80 different things that are not sales, maybe that's a good place to start. But you have to be pretty analytical about your current situation.
Yeah, absolutely. And deciding, hey, like for one of the things that I do is I do a lot of podcasts. So having somebody on my team who looks for people that I can be on their podcast versus sourcing mine makes a lot of sense because as the face of the business, I get out there and that's how I get more business. So deciding what is that number one thing that's bringing in the client for you and going, is this something that I enjoy doing? And if so, how do I get other things off my plate so I can do more of that? And if it's something that I don't like doing, which I find is a lot of people, because none of us really like to sell because we're all heart centered entrepreneurs
Yeah.
and we want to just help people, which is great, but you can't help people unless you're selling to them. And so finding somebody who's going to be that person for you, I think is a great reason to use Nearshore because you have the English, you've got, they're working with a lot of those bigger companies as well. So there's a lot of experience there and then looking at the Philippines for things like those admin tasks, those VA tasks, and social media. so that way you can start splitting things off. Because one of the conversations that we've had is how do you do that with having onshore, stateside, nearshore, and offshore? And really, the healthiest way to grow a business is to have a little bit of each.
Yeah, I think that's probably true. One of the major considerations in nearshore versus offshore, I've already mentioned cost. Offshore is usually less expensive. And okay, so let me just be more specific. So when I say offshore and nearshore, when I say offshore, I mean the Philippines and India, really. I'm not talking about Europe, although that is definitely a place that you can staff from, or Africa. You can also staff in Africa. But for the purposes of like the way we do staffing, when I say offshore, I mean the Philippines and India. And when I say nearshore, I mean Latin America, Central and South America, just for clarity's sake, because offshore can mean lots of different things.
Anywhere that's
Um,
not this
Exactly.
continent.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, which is a lot of places. But one of the, like I said, cost offshoring in the way that I'm defining it is going to be almost always less expensive than Latin America. But the other consideration is time zone. That can be a really big deal for a lot of businesses. If you have a team in the Philippines, they're going to be working nighttime in the States. For some people, that's fine. For some people, it's not fine. And that's a really important thing to take into consideration. In Latin America, at least in the countries that we usually staff from, your teams are going to be on Central Time or Eastern time. So I'm in Nashville. My business partner lives in Florida, so that's Central and Eastern time. So it's like our whole network practically has a special interest in the Central and East staffing in a Central and Eastern time zone. So that's a
Mhm.
major consideration too. I guess we're sort of tucking into this second question now about the differences between offshore and nearshore. So I'll just go for it. The other difference is, and so let me before I explain this, let me frame it. This is anecdotal. I'm just going to explain what the experience was like with us at Hello Yeti. So I'm not like saying that this is always the case or this is the case with everybody's business or every team in any part of the world, but this is sort of the way it worked with us. We started out in the Philippines only, and that was great. We really started to run into hangups with the time zone.
Hmm.
It really, really started to get to us. It's hard on candidates. And that's just as an aside, that's really important. It's a really important piece of strategy that I guess we didn't mention before, but I want to mention it now. Like the people you're staffing are human beings. They have families, they have lives, and working nights is hard. It's hard on anybody. I'm not saying they can't do it, but it is hard. And especially if you have a part-time teams in the Philippines, there is a chance that they have day jobs too. And they're also, doing night work. Um, and that can be tough on candidates and it can be tough on businesses. So we started to run into some hangups because of that. Also, and this is not a slight against people in the Philippines, it's just a reality of living in different hemispheres, is I think occasionally there was sort of a cultural misalignment between us and our clients and the teams in the Philippines. No ethical problems at all. Just, I think, some general cultural things that were a little bit asynchronous that started to cause some problems for us on the client facing side. So a lot of really great doers and hard workers and honest workers in the Philippines. We still have a team in the Philippines and they do great work. So I have no bad feelings about the Philippines. They're great over there. But once made the move to Latin America, what we started to find was that, they're in the same hemisphere as we are. A lot of the countries we staff from are close to the States. People on our teams have been to the States many, many times and have a lot of experience doing client-facing work with companies that are in the US. And so the cultural alignment was a little bit more straightforward on the client-facing side, which helped a lot. And the time zone thing was really big for us too. So I think those are probably, I think I've said three key differences. So just to sort of summarize those, the first one was cost. Generally, the Philippines and India are going to be cheaper than Latin America. If that is like a critical consideration for your business, then that's important to know. Second difference is time zone. Latin America is probably going to be Central Eastern time. India and Philippines is not. They're going to be working basically nights in the
Uh-huh.
States. And then the third difference is cultural understanding. Generally, it's not always the case, but generally, cultural alignment, company cultural alignment is just a little bit easier to find in Latin America than the Philippines.
Mhm. Yeah, absolutely. And it's all things that you have to consider as a business owner because a lot of people start out as a solopreneur. They're doing all the things, they're wearing all of the hats. And now we're basically asking you to let somebody else watch your baby. As much as I hate that analogy, people treat their business like it's a baby. And we need to start thinking about our businesses as machines that have different parts that have to work together because it's a lot easier to say, "Hey, I need you to work on this part," than it is for me to say, "Hey, I need you to watch my kid." So, when you can start to do that with your business, then taking all these things into consideration, like the time zone, is it a big deal? This is why one of the reasons that I said social media and graphic design and those things that you have to approve are a great thing to do in the Philippines, because I know that when I hand my VAs those specific tasks, I can hand it to them on my Friday night knowing that it's their weekend, and I go, "Hey, you do this whenever you want to, as long as it's done by this day." And so being very organized as a business owner also has to be a piece of this, because as both of us have seen, sometimes people go into hiring with their hair on fire and they go, "Oh my God, I need somebody. I need somebody to take these tasks off my plate because I've got so much going on, or I have a couple of more clients that came in, or I have goals to have 15 clients or 100 clients." I get people all the time that come to me and they say, "Well, I just want to have 100 clients, or I want to make $1 million." And I go, "Could your business support that right now?" And 99.9% of the time, the answer is no. And I have no idea how to get somebody to actually get to that point. So then that's when you need to say, "Hey, do I need to hire a consultant from the States who's just going to come in, look at my business, and tell me exactly what to do next? Do I need to come and talk to Daniel about, hey, I'm wanting to outsource. We have the systems in place, we have the structure in place. So now we want to get somebody to take over these structures that we've created." Or do I need to say, "Hey, I'm going to try this by myself. I have some friends, somebody has a VA that needs extra hours," which is how I got into this. "And I'm going to try." There's goods and there's bads about all of those things. If you're hiring a consultant like me from the States, it's going to be more expensive. It just is what it is. If you're working with Daniel, there's going to be some costs there, and it's going to take a little bit of time to get somebody in the right place, because they're going to do all the hard work of actually interviewing everybody and giving them to you, which is fabulous. And if you go the route where you're doing it yourself, I've been there. I've hired the wrong person and had to let them go, or they didn't show up to work for a certain amount of time. And you're like, "Oh my God, did you die? Because I can't actually go and find you." And so these are all considerations that you have to start thinking about when you're wanting to outsource something. It doesn't matter how you're getting it off your plate, whether it's the States or somewhere else. We have to start making these considerations as a business earlier than we have been. Don't wait till your hair's on fire to be like, "Oh my God, I need somebody."
Yeah, I agree. It may be that you need to hire a consultant in the States. I mean, maybe you need that. I think there's nothing wrong with that at all. It kind of depends on where you are as a business. It depends on how much money you have. I know that's a really critical consideration. It's like, how much cash do I have to throw at this problem? How much cash do I have to throw? And how big is the problem? How manifest is it? Is it just that I'm too busy with admin, or is it just that, like, I can't handle my client onboarding anymore, or I need one or two people on my team? Or is it like, if I do not fix the operations in my company, I'm going to die, you know?
Mhm.
It's like, in a situation like that, probably you don't need a VA, you know? And hiring a VA, is that VA is not going to like you, and they're not going to want to stay. And so that's always something we try to consider when we're talking to clients, is not just what does this client need, but is this client in a position to set someone up for success?
Yes.
Because, like I said, the candidates we staff are human beings. They have families, their time is valuable, they have career aspirations. And so it's critically important to evaluate whether or not a company is in a position to hire an individual and set them up to succeed in their job, or whether a company is in a position where everything is burning and they need someone basically to come in and run the company for them for a few weeks, which would
Yeah.
be when they call somebody like you. And generally, I think business owners are generally pretty aware. Like, I haven't so far had a meeting where someone comes to me and is like, "Hey, my whole company is falling apart. Can you please find me a VA in the Philippines to fix this problem?" Like,
Mhm.
that's not really a conversation I have. So I think generally business owners are, I think, pretty aware of that. The majority of conversations I have are, a company has reached a point where they need to make a change to support growth. So usually businesses that I work with are in a pretty good position. They're just maybe a little bit vulnerable because their team is too small, or because their CEO or the founder, whoever, is just doing too much. And so those are usually the people having conversations with me, which is encouraging, because if you know I'm not a good fit for a business that's on fire. Personnel is probably, maybe it's like your big issue, but probably there's more going on there. And I'm not a consultant. That's not what I
Yeah.
do. So
Well,
yeah.
and I think if you find yourself going, "I don't know exactly what I do every day, and I don't know how things are coming in and going out, and I'm just making money by the grace of God," then that's probably when you need to hire a consultant. Because some of the things that I see on my end before I send somebody to go find somebody else to take over the tasks is I'm doing too many things that technology could be doing for me. If you're like, I know that there is apps and tech and things out there that I could have a consultant come in and give me an idea of what I need to get in order to put myself in a better position, then that's a really good time to do that because you don't want to hire somebody in and pay them over several months and then go, what have you been doing this whole entire time? And I can tell you, working with stateside businesses doing consulting, that I see that a lot because of the fact that it just gets too big. So you have this, there's a chance of you doing this when you're really tiny, but there's also a chance as you get bigger. So for those of you listening that have bigger businesses that we're talking 25, 50, 100 plus individuals on your team, going, what are all these people doing? Am I time tracking what my people are doing every so often so that I know exactly what one, they're doing, and then two, how do I train other people to do those jobs? Because God forbid somebody leaves your company or they get hit by a bus or they want to go on vacation. These are things that a lot of people don't consider when they're running a business because we take the human piece of it out, like we've talked about several times already. And how do we support ourselves in that for the health of the business long term? And so, a great book for that, if you are interested, is called Clockwork by Mike Michalowicz because it gives you that ability to go, how do I unbottleneck all these different aspects? And whether you're a small business or you're in that mid to large size business space, you're having similar problems. They're just how extreme are they? Depends on the size of the business and how many people are involved.
And, how competent is your leadership? I mean, not to be, I guess it's not really cynical. I mean, it's just like, it's just reality. I mean, if you
It
if you have leadership who's not doing a good job, then, then things are not going to go well for you. I know one of the things that really helped us, I don't know that we were having a problem with incompetent leadership when we were experiencing growing pains in the marketing space. I don't know that incompetent leadership was the problem as much as a lack of competent leadership. Maybe that's a little bit nicer way of putting it. Yeah.
Yeah, well,
If
and
you
not
don't have
everybody
competent leaders in place. And
exactly.
nearshore, yeah, go ahead, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, not everybody knows how to lead.
Mhm.
Everybody can have an idea and start a business, but I work with corporations that they move a really amazing manager into leadership, and then he's like, "What do I do? These were my buddies I was going to the bar with, and now all of a sudden I have to tell them what to do?" And so we have to take that into consideration too of like, it might not just be the owner of the business. It's all those other people that you bring on that are amazing at their job. Have we taught them how to lead well so that they can have other people under them that they're telling what to do? Because if they don't know what they're doing all day, how are they supposed to let other people know what they're supposed to be doing all day?
Yeah, you're right. And for us, really the solution was staffing leadership out of Latin America.
Mhm.
I mean, it just was. We had teams, but we really needed things to be streamlined. And I don't think that anyone on our team was incompetent at the time, including me and my partner. I don't think we were like being fools about running the business, but at a certain point, competence will only get you so far. Like your plate is only so big. So you need to bring people on who are competent to take things off your plate in a way that is productive and helps your business. And for us, the thing that really accomplished that when we started to experience growing pains in marketing was Latin American leadership. People who have worked with us at this point for years, they're on our executive team. Like I said, I just had a meeting a few weeks ago with our COO because he had some thoughts about our client intake. And those kinds of people are like gold.
Mm.
They're like gold. I mean, they're not only are they nice to work with just because they're lovely people, but when they invest their leadership talent into your business, there's really extraordinary things can start to happen. And I think one of the misconceptions about outsourcing is that a high level of visionary talent and visionary initiative is not something you can find overseas. I think some people have that idea. Well, I don't think. I know some people do. How
Mhm.
many? I don't know, but it's an idea I've encountered. Um, and what we have found is that that's not the case. It takes more time and it's a little more expensive to staff people with a lot of executive experience who can help your business really run in the way that you want it to from sort of a 30,000-foot view. But you can find it in Latin America. I mean, you really can, especially if your business, just to make it even a little more specific, if your business and the operations of your business are very digitized. If you're running things through a tech stack, and if you're not, I think Cabrini, you'll probably agree. Maybe you should be. Maybe you should look into it. But especially if you are, then bringing a remote leader in Latin America in to kind of evaluate things and to to lead with a lot of visionary initiative is definitely something that we help businesses do.
Well, and thinking about the digitized side is how much of your business is online. A lot
Mhm.
of people that listen to this podcast, there is a lot of online businesses, but we're still seeing a good amount of mom and pop and smaller local businesses that don't have a Facebook page, don't have a website. And it's 2025 and we're still seeing that. So there's always more ways to do this. There's AI, there's all these things changing in the world that people go, oh my gosh, this is so scary. This is one of those pieces where maybe you can outsource some of the scary in the midst of growing your business because you're going to have to deal with it today or tomorrow. You might as well just get it done.
Deal with like the digital side of things, or what
Any
do you mean?
of these things. So any of
Yeah,
these
yeah.
scary things that are coming, you're gonna have to deal with it. And so I see so many people in the space when we talk about things like AI that they freak out about it instead of going, "How do I find somebody who can help me with this?" This is another really great reason to be like, "Can I find somebody who can do this for me?" No matter where you hire them from, at the end of the day, it's saying, "I know I can't handle all these things. I am only one human. So that means that I need other humans to help me grow in the way that I want to grow."
Yeah. Yeah, I think you're definitely right. Mm, I was talking with someone a couple days ago, and they said, I'm trying to remember exactly the words that they said, but it was something to the effect of every company is a media company
Mhm.
now, whether they know it or not. Like, you're a media company. Like, the way that you sell these days is human touch. Like, absolutely, I do all kinds of face-to-face networking, but also your digital footprint. Can people find you online? And can now, that person put it like strongly, and maybe they're right. I'm not sure, but I thought that was an interesting way of putting it.
Mhm.
It's like you are an online company. The difference is, companies who know that and companies who don't. And like
Yep.
companies who know that are getting ahead, and they have a bigger presence and they have a bigger network. And companies who don't, at least I think this person was making the case, they're getting left behind. And one of the cool things about what we do at Hello Yeti is I don't feel like, I know nearshore staffing fits so neatly into an effort to expand your company's digital presence. Like, there are all kinds of things that you can staff someone to do nearshore. But because so many companies have digital workflows, they have CRMs, they have, hosting issues, they have a social media footprint, they have all these demands on their time that are operating, online, that it's so simple. It's so simple to find somebody to work remotely, to take care of a lot of that stuff, to connect the dots, to work on the back end of your CRM or whatever, to plug your CRM into everything else you're using. There's a lot of business owners, they have this platform and this platform and this platform because they know it's like
Mhm.
this is how a lot of businesses are run. This is a more efficient way to run a business. And then they reach a point where every piece of their sort of their tech stack is like not coherent anymore. And things, those are the kinds of, I guess, modern kind of business problems that I feel like have just kicked the door wide open for nearshore staffing as a solution because people can work remotely to fix these problems. And it's definitely been a powerful resource for us. And I think for the people we've worked with too.
Yes. Well, and we've had an SEO expert on the podcast who very much said it's more important for Google to know who you are, for the internet, for AI, for ChatGPT to know who you are than it is for the actual humans to know who you are because they can't find you unless they can Google you, unless I can ask ChatGPT who's the best person for X, Y, and Z. The world has changed very dramatically even in the last 6 months for businesses and searching. And so, how are we putting more of that out there? And one of those reasons is getting somebody to help you do that because it's a lot to keep up with.
Yeah, oh yeah, it's a ton. And this is why I said a little earlier, I think nearshore staffing would be helpful for more businesses than a lot of people think. To put that in context now, that statement in context, the reason I believe that is because of exactly what we're talking about.
Mhm.
Every business has, or if they don't have, they need a tech stack. Every business has, or if they don't have, they probably need a CRM. Every business has, or if they don't have, they need a social media presence. Like every business. And so
Mhm.
now businesses that maybe before business was done so much business was done online, maybe they didn't need outsourcing
Mhm.
because outsourcing was like call centers and manufacturing, and that was kind of it. That's not true anymore about outsourcing. And so I really think for that reason and others, but especially that one, sort of the expanse of the digital landscape in the small business arena, I think nearshore staffing is such a powerful tool for a lot more businesses and a lot more industries than people realize. And people are starting to realize it, I think, but there's a lot more discovery to be made in that direction, I believe.
Absolutely. So, as we wrap up, I would love for you, we have two more questions of where you are and then our last special question that we always ask. But I would love for you to tell us how people can get in contact with you if they're like, hey, I have some questions, Daniel. You can always go to Spotify and pop them into the episode, and I can give those to Daniel. And if we have enough of those, we'll bring him back on to answer all of those. But where can people find you if they're like, oh my gosh, I need to get some of this stuff off my plate? And this sounds great.
Yeah, so there's a couple ways. HelloYeti.com. The calendar link on the website is my personal calendar link. So if you want to meet me, talk to me, ask me questions face to face, you can definitely go to HelloYeti.com and just put something on my calendar, and we can talk that way. I network in Nashville and Franklin and Spring Hill and Murfreesboro and Cool Springs and Brentwood. I'm all over Middle Tennessee. So if you ever wanted to meet in person, probably LinkedIn is a great way to get in contact with me. I'm very active on LinkedIn. My name is Daniel Chandler, not too difficult for people to remember, hopefully. So yeah, if you connect with me on LinkedIn, send me a message, then I'll definitely respond. I'm very active there as well.
Okay, awesome. And then as far as our last question, which I gave you a little bit of an insight in before we started, is if you had a warning label, what would yours be?
Yeah, man. I feel like so many things. It's hard to pick. Hard to pick. Ignore speed limits.
Okay, I
Probably a
like
pretty good
it.
one.
You
Yeah,
like
it's probably
speed.
pretty. I do like speed. Yes. I would not say I'm super patient.
Mhm.
Yeah, I like to move. I like to move.
Done and done. Love it.
It's true in the car, although I'm a pretty safe driver, but it's definitely more true in life.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, I like
Get
to
to where you
move.
need to go.
Yep.
I love it. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to be on the podcast and sharing all this with us because it gets more complicated the bigger that you get, and then it gets easier, and then it gets more complicated again. New levels, new devils. And so, this is something that if you're looking to outsource, definitely reach out to Daniel and let's figure out how to get some of those things off your plate so you can start running the business that you want and living the life that you want and not being consumed by your business. So, we will see you next week on Top Shelf Creator. Thank you for listening to the Top Shelf Creator podcast. You can find us on Instagram, LinkedIn, and TikTok at Top Shelf Creator. We hope you enjoyed this episode, and we would love to see you share it with a friend and give us a review wherever you listen to help us reach more creators and entrepreneurs just like you.